this video is for our 2nd through 4th grade team for September week 3. Yeah, go get it. Go get over there. Go get the hula hoops. And this month we are learning all about trust, putting your confidence in someone you can depend on. Yeah, thank you. And our memory verse is, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. We've also got our parent cue for this week, so make sure that all of the kids get these to take home. It just has their what their story is about. So this week we're learning about how Joseph went to jail, their bottom line, their memory verse, and things for parents. So make sure all the kids get those. If they weren't here this past week, make sure they get their memory verse card. So like I said, we are talking about Joseph all month long. And last week we talked about how Joseph was kind of the favorite out of the 12 brothers. His dad got him a special coat. His older brothers were jealous, so they sold him into slavery. And he ends up becoming a slave at Potiphar's house. And Potiphar's wife accuses Joseph of making a move on her. You might remember the story. And Joseph did not. In fact, he ran away. But Potiphar's wife still accused him of it, and he found himself in jail. So this week's story is about Joseph going to jail. And our bottom line is, when life doesn't make sense, you can trust that God is with you, because it didn't make sense to Joseph why he was in jail. But he trusted still that God was with him. And there's a lot of times in our kids' lives when things are going to happen that don't make sense. Divorce, pets dying, people getting sick in their lives, friends moving away. But we want them to know that they can still trust that God is with them. So we'd love for you to join us in the garage room at 8:20 and 10:20 for donuts and coffee and to pray together, to just build each other up as a community. Then we definitely want you to be in your small groups by 8:30 and 10:30 to make sure you've got everything ready to go. No, I need this, please. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. Nope. Okay. Thank you. Okay, can you take this? Thank you. Okay, sorry, kid distraction this week. That's why I've been taking these home to do it, because it's just easier. Then when kids start rolling at 8:40 and 10:40, you're going to have paper and markers. You want to welcome all their kids, ask how their week was, make it personal, make sure you know everyone's name, help new guests to feel welcome and comfortable, and then you're going to explain the concept of a cupbearer, or in some versions they say a wine taster. And what it is it's a person who tasted foods and drinks before the king did, to make sure that it wasn't poisoned. So, and because that's what Joseph was. He was the king's cupbearer. So you're going to tell the kids to pretend that they are the king's cupbearer. And on the paper, they're going to make 2 lists. Things that they would love to taste for the king and things that they would hate to taste for the king. Hey, why do you need this? Why this? Just to kind of get their mind tracking along that. Oh my gosh. Okay, Lola, please stop. Please stop. I know, we are done. Here, look at that. Okay, sorry, this is the worst video making ever. Okay, then for the intro activity starting at 9 or 11, you have a silly sentences activity page, which looks like this. And you're going to give each kid an activity page and have them take turns reading sentences out loud. So it looks like this. Okay, do you want me to get you one out? Okay, do you want one? No. Okay. Do you want me to get you one? And you're going to let kids take turns reading the sentences out loud and just acknowledge that the sentences don't make sense. And then you're going to give each kid a pair of scissors and set out the tape and encourage kids to cut the sentences apart on the lines and challenge them to cut each sentence apart in one place and rearrange the pieces to make a sentence that does make sense. And then read the new sentences out loud. So for instance, the elephant lifted his trunk and wrote a sermon for Sunday. So you might instead say, the pastor went to church and wrote a sermon for Sunday, and kind of make them make sense. Do you want this? Okay, come on. I'm going to keep talking while I set this down. So then you're going to close that activity down while I get this out for her so she will go away. Okay, go play with those stickers over there. You're going to close this activity down by saying, so guys, those were some really silly sentences at first, and they did not make a whole lot of sense, but then you figured out how to make them make sense. Well, today we're going to go to large group where we're going to hear about what to do during other times when things don't make sense. So you'll head to large group. We have a live host and storyteller this week telling us our story about Joseph. When you get back from large group, you're going to do an activity called Good Reason or Not. You're going to have kids line up side by side at one end of your space, and you're going to stand on the other side. It's going to kind of be like Mother May I. So explain that you're going to call it an instruction, and the kids need to follow it. And their goal is to make it across the room to you. So start calling out instructions. There's a whole list down here. And there should be absolutely no rhyme or reason to why kids sometimes move forward and sometimes move back. But in general, most of the instructions should entail some type of moving forward so that the game keeps going. So once the kid reaches you, you can start the game over if you have time. So here's some examples. If you're wearing red, take 3 steps forward. If you have blue eyes, take 1 giant step forward. If you have a sister, take 2 steps back. So you're not going to know. These are just going to be random things about kids that they couldn't really help. It just is what it is. And then it says, if you're ready to end the game and nobody is close to you, just say, if you heard a Bible story about Joseph today, skip to me. And just, kind of try to get one kid to you. So you're going to say, that game didn't always seem fair, did it? Well, just like in this game, some things aren't fair and don't make sense. However, in the game, I didn't have a good reason when someone had to step back. But God always has a reason, even if we might never know it. And you can always trust that He's with us, even when it doesn't make sense. So we won't always know why bad things happen. Sometimes life just doesn't make sense. But there are times when God lets us feel pain and heartbreak and loss. But when life doesn't make sense, you can trust that God is with you. So then for the memory verse activity, you are going to need this page that's called Trust in God, and it has Noah, Abraham, Joseph, and Joseph. So kids have learned about Noah and Abraham already in August, and then they've learned these 2 stories about Joseph. So it gives you the verse and where to look it up. Oh, do you need help getting a sticker off? There you go. So what you're going to do is have kids look up Proverbs 3:5, which is their memory verse for the month, and say it out loud several times together. Sorry, just got a super dry throat. Then you're going to hand out the activity pages and tell kids to look up 2 of the verses or passages and read them. And think about how even though the people didn't understand God's plan at the time, they still trusted them. So they'll pick 2 of the 4. And then instruct them to choose 1 of the verses or passages and write down how God's plan turned out for that person. So you could do this all together as a whole group. You could look these up together. If you have older kids or they're more independent, you could give, each pair a thing to look up and have them write down the verse and tell other people about it. And then you'll just close it by saying, so guys, in all of these situations, God asked someone to do something that might have seemed a little crazy, or He allowed something to happen that seemed really bad. But we know how all their stories ended, don't we? We know how they ended for those men, and we know how they ultimately led to Jesus coming to earth to save us. And has anything ever happened in your life that seemed crazy or really bad at the time, but later you saw God's plan? Let me give you an example and maybe tell something from your own life that didn't make sense, but now you see the bigger plan. So for you, maybe you had to move or you had to leave your friends and you couldn't see how that could ever be a good plan, but now you've settled into a new place and made new friends. Maybe you live closer to people. Maybe your dog died and that dog had been in your family forever and you didn't see how that could be a good plan, but then your mom reminded you that your dog was old and had been in a lot of pain and that had made you sad, and then your family got a new puppy. Or maybe you let kids share stories. And just remember, when life doesn't make sense, you can trust that God is with you. Then you've got some optional discussion questions. When's it hard to trust God? How do you think Joseph felt during the dark times in his story? Is it easy to trust God when things are going good? All those questions that you can feel free to discuss with your group. And then to close down in prayer, you're just going to gather kids with you and just say, so guys, when life doesn't make sense, you can trust that God is with you. And in today's story, Joseph felt lots of emotions because he went through a lot of situations where things didn't make sense and he wasn't in control. But he still trusted God, and we can do the same. God is with you when you're sad. He's with you when you're angry. He's with you when you're anxious. He's with you when you're happy. No matter what is happening in your life, no matter how you feel, God is there, and you can trust Him always. So let's pray about that, and then pray with your kids, and just remind them that even when life doesn't make sense, God is always with them. So that's it for this week, guys. Sorry my video was crazy with Lola. Now she's destroying a Noah sticker page, but you know what? She's quiet and not bothering me, so it's awesome. Win-win. Thank you guys for serving. You all are just amazing. We had 277 kids come to church this past Sunday. That was 50 more than last year on this weekend. It was just awesome. I know we had a ton of kids in downtown. Thank you guys for just being such amazing small group leaders. I mean, really, you guys are just outstanding. So thank you for coming and leading on Sunday mornings, doing what you're doing, pouring into these kids' lives, teaching them about who Jesus is and how much He loves them. And thanks for serving. I'll see you guys on Sunday.